All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's day 17. Day 17, episode 18. We got a 17 and an 18, and I got a 17 and 18 for you later, too. And 40 days of 4VKM, we're right in the mix of it. They tried to ruin it with the whole Vince McMahon stepping down and accusations and all this stuff, but we have some wonderful syncs that are going on, including my buddy Jacob Israel, who's actually featured in this episode. And there's a lot of stuff in this episode that he touched on today on one of his episodes on his show, because he sees a lot of the same stuff, comes from a different point of view. You know, he used to be there in WWE, but it's fascinating stuff. This is the Gridiron Gang 3. We've reviewed 2 of them so far, and so you guys have kind of seen, the main story behind that. The Rock is part of the Gridiron Gang. He did the movie Gridiron Gang. He's part of this Gridiron Gang as well. And everybody would tell me, The Rock, not a good guy, da-da-da. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's a bad guy, right? But I said, I think he's working for the White Hats. I think he's working on Team Trump. Trump did say he was his favorite wrestler in the year 2000. Haven't seen Trump come back and say somebody else was his favorite wrestler since. I guess maybe Lashley, because Lashley was this guy that helped them win at WrestleMania 23. We'll talk about that later. But you got The Rock. What was the news with The Rock last night breaking during the Royal Rumble? Benny Johnson showing the clip of The Rock being interviewed by Fox News with Nick Khan, CEO of WWE. The day that Rock took over as on the board of directors for TKO. And they asked him about Donald Trump ever coming back into wrestling. And Nick Khan states, we sell out red states, we sell out blue states, but politics is not, we're not focused on that at all. And then The Rock jumps in, he goes, well, how about that ovation that he got, when he came out at UFC? And you hear Rock go, yeah, Trump. So, it's like everything seems to be turning. You got Snoop Dogg today came out. He did an interview where he's like, I got nothing but love and respect for Donald Trump. So what is going on? It's like we're going into upside down world right now, isn't it? But anyway, we're going to get into the episode. So it's Gridiron Gang 3 to the Moon is the title of it. And it was released on 3/21/21. So March 21st, 2021. So the video kicks off with a great friend of President Trump, Robert Kiyosaki, right? So if you ever read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that was written by real Robert Kiyosaki, a great friend to President Trump. They go way back as well. Highly recommend anybody reads that book. At the end of the day, he basically tells you how, your number one expense is your taxes. So he helps you understand how to lower that expense. So you have Robert Kiyosaki, and he writes a book with President Trump. It's Why We Want You to Be Rich, right? And they shoot this video. They're at one of Trump's golf courses, I think in Los Angeles or something. And, Trump's drawing a couple circles with his fingers as he's walking around. You could argue he's drawing some air cues there. So it's just fun to think about. But, one of the things that they talk about is failure. And keep in mind, this is March 2021. So Trump just came out of office. He just lost the election. So everybody thinks he's a big fat failure, right? One of the things that I find interesting is that you always see these reports come out that says, President Trump got X million dollars from so-and-so, and it's always little amounts. Like he got $5 million, $12 million, whatever. While he was president, people stayed at his hotels and whatnot. When the truth is, President Trump's net worth decreased by $700 million through his presidency, right? So compare that to the other politicians that go there and become multimillionaires on $100,000, $150,000, maybe $200,000 salaries per year. Like Nancy Pelosi, she's the best stock investor in the history of stock investors, right? So you see them talking about all that. You also see some clips of Joe Biden, right, being a clown, right? So this is still early on, only a couple months into his presidency. He already fell down the flight of stairs, right? Going up Air Force One, he falls. That was within 2 months of his presidency, right? But the thing that really stood out to me, and this is really what put me over the top. If you go back and you watch the episode yesterday when we were talking about the anomalies in the inauguration and in the White House and all that stuff, you'll notice, the big one that really sold me, like, wow, I think we are watching a movie. It was Joe Biden when he walked out to the press. He's wearing his mask, right? And he does the point, right? And you see all these little microphones in front of Joe Biden, and then you see his hand kind of go through the microwave. The microphone. It is, as somebody that does green screens and works with green screens and whatnot, it was the shittiest green screen job I had ever seen in my life. And I wonder if they just put that there. Are they trolling us and using a green screen and then saying, oh no, we're not using a green screen. That's really how it happened, right? Go and look at the clip in slow motion. It's a freaking green screen. No doubt in my mind. Just look at it. It's fake as hell. So I won't really spend so much time on that, but I thought that was a fun little thing that they were showing us there about, hey, I know you're upset right now. Trump's gone, but somebody's in control of this guy. Is it the bad guys? Is it the good guys? I don't know. I guess we'll find out one of these days, right? So let's get into some wrestling from there. So we talk about Trump and Kiyosaki. And then we move on to Bad Bunny. Last night was the Royal Rumble, and I show you a clip from the Royal Rumble in 2021 where Bad Bunny is performing, and he's performing a song called Booker T, and the wrestler Booker T's there standing there like a G. And the thing that always caught my mind about this is that Bad Bunny had a shirt on that said 2032. So what does that mean? What does 2032 mean, right? Well, shortly after this, The Rock had come out with a television show called Young Rock. And this was on NBC, Universal Champion. And what was very interesting is that the whole premise of this television show is that The Rock is running for president of the United States, and he's campaigning, and he's basically telling stories in these interviews that he gives on the show about his career, his life, his past, everything about The Rock, right? So you take it all through his history. And what's the interesting thing about that is that the year that he's running for president, takes place in the future, is 2032. So is that what Bad Bunny was kind of referencing right there? I've been talking about the predictive programming around The Rock for years and how he's kind of been groomed to be a future president potentially. Let's see what happens with all that at the end of the day. But it is very, very interesting. So speaking of presidents, we take it to the White House. We take it to President Trump with Dave Portnoy. Remember, we talked about that in one of the other Gridiron gangs. There's a lot of Dave Portnoy in this episode. He's a charter carrying member of the Gridiron gang. He doesn't know it, but he is. So you have Trump's there with Portnoy, Mariano Rivera, the Sandman, number 42, New York Yankees, and the closer, if you want to call him that. And he is showing him the Resolute desk. And he's like, check this out. This is the Resolute desk. Can you believe how cool this is, the Resolute desk? And Portnoy's like, oh, wow, Resolute desk, right? So then from there, I show you a scene. It's a meme, I guess you call it a meme, that our friend Vincent Kennedy had posted. And it's Trump. It's the iconic JFK Jr. under the desk picture. But it is Trump sitting where JFK Sr. is. And it is like adult JFK Jr. sitting underneath Trump, where Jr. was in the Resolute desk. So it's fun, right? And I think VK's caption was, like something like, can you imagine if the story ends like this or something like that? So it's pretty cool, right? Now, is there any VK ties to professional wrestling? Well, we already know Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And no, I'm not saying that they're the same person. Like I've been saying, we're talking about two different Vincent Kennedys, but they kind of are helping tell the same story in their own different ways, right? So you have VK, as he's known as, right? And what if I told you that there was a wrestler named VK Wall Street? Now, before he was VK Wall Street, he was the IRS in WWF. And he was part of the $1 Million Corporation with Ted DiBiase. So once again, you have that corporation there. You know, it always pops up in WWE. So he leaves and he goes to WCW. And they like to rib each other when it comes to wrestler names and whatnot. But, you know, back when they were feuding as companies. Because what ends up happening is, you know, in this instance, the real life Mike Rotunda, he was a character IRS in WWF. WWF owned that character IRS, so he couldn't go be IRS in WCW. So they renamed him. They renamed him VK Wall Street. And, you know, it's very interesting. Now, the part that I find fun is Eric Bischoff's on commentary. And right as the name change happens, because I think he might have just been Wall Street or something like that. But right as the name change happens, Bischoff's on commentary and he goes, "What's up with the VK stuff?" And it just always made me pop when I heard that because, you know, what's up with all the VK stuff? That's what we ask, right? What's up with all the VK stuff on Twitter, on X, right? Vincent Crip 46. What's up with that, right? So it's a fun little sync there. And, you know, VK's in wrestling back at the end of the day. At this point, I think he was off Twitter. Because Twitter 1.0 did the purge shortly after January 6th. So you have that. And he went on a new platform, Anon Up, where, you know, the logo is kind of like a V, but it's like a check mark at the same time, too. So, you know, you got your V right there, VK. And it's pretty fun. VK was able to continue on and bring his band of Anons with him to be able to continue enlightening and raising the vibes out there amongst the Patriot community. So you have all this cool stuff. VK is a wrestler, right? Who would have thought that? We talked about how WrestleMania 20 in WrestleMania 36, it happened with no fans. It was supposed to take place in Tampa. Tampa ends up being the home for Super Bowl 55, which we get to later. But it was also then the home for WrestleMania 37 the next year once they were able to finally have some fans back, right? But going back to that WrestleMania with no fans, you had Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski was the host of that WrestleMania. And just a couple months before that, I was actually at a Gronk beach party. It was on, I think, 2/1, 2020. And, you know, it was a fun time, to say the least. I posted a picture of that from when I was at that event. But Gronk was friends with a wrestler called Mojo Rawley. And Mojo Rawley was the 24/7 champion at the time, which was a belt similar to the Hardcore Championship back in the day in wrestling, where it could kind of be defended anywhere, any place, anytime, 24/7, right? So that was kind of the name of the belt. And so Mojo, his buddy, is the champ. Also at that party was Triple H, Stephanie, so Bill Belichick was there as well, I believe, right? So you had all these Gridiron Gang people there at the show, right? Including me, right? But I wasn't mingling with those people. I was down with the peasants, as I like to call it, but, you know, not allowed to get in to the VIP area. Even though I had some friends in there, and, I would be looking down. They were up on the balcony. I'd be like, "Hey, man, can you get me in?" You know, it'd be like, have fun down there, right? So, yeah. But it was a good time regardless, right? And actually, I think that the night before that, I was at a Barstool event. It was called Bash at the Beach, I think. And it was Rough and Rowdy, which is like their boxing promoted event, right? And if you go and look at that footage, this is 20 days before the first 4 VKM ever came out. And if you go and you look at that footage on Barstool's archives, if you can find it, it's probably in their premium section or Barstool Gold or something like that. You'll see that I'm sitting right behind Dave Portnoy on commentary. So you see me practically almost the whole show. Wherever they're showing Dave, you can see me not far behind there too. Saw Dave that night, saw Erica that night, shook Erica's hand, Erica Nardini, who became who was CEO of Barstool at the time, and was later added on to the board of directors for WWE. But didn't have a conversation with them. They don't know who I am. Just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and shook hands. Not with Dave, but definitely with Erica. Dave kind of looked at me like that, and remember I told you Dave fired me. So I don't know if you remember me from back then, or back in 2010, or whatever the case be, but he gave me a look like that, which was all good. So we talked about the beach party, right? So in 2021, what else happens? You have Tom Brady leaving the New England Patriots, right? So he's a card-carrying member of the Gridiron Gang also. He's leaving the Patriots. What's going on? He goes to Tampa Bay, which, by the way, they're hosting Super Bowl 55. So, that's kind of interesting. Is Brady going to win the Super Bowl? Who knows, right? So that happened in 2020 when he left. That Super Bowl that he won was played in 2021, right before this video came out. So Brady leaves the Pats. Dave Portnoy, not happy about it. Not only is he not happy about that, but he has COVID. He's got lockdowns. He's raging against Fauci. He starts doing these interviews or these candid, iPhone videos like this where he's just raging on Fauci and how stupid this whole thing is and the lockdowns. And don't forget, he started the small business fund, the Barstool Small Business Fund, really helped out a lot of small businesses that would have gotten shut down without the help. So he did a really good job, and I think he showed his true colors through the pandemic as far as, whose side is he on, right? He's on the side of freedom at the end of the day, Mr. Portnoy is. So, Tucker Carlson gave him some credit. He would then start going on Tucker Carlson and doing interviews, which was very interesting. So, very cool. You had The Rock, who, he spoke up on the Brady thing. Remember Gridiron Gang 1? I show you about The Rock and Brady, kind of their parallel rise right there. And, and I also remind people about that clip where The Rock says he's friends in his Biden endorsement video. He says the word friends at the 17-second mark, where he added in without the Biden administration knowing or the Biden campaign knowing. And then the next day, how the military plane said AMC, which equals 17, The Rock, right? And everybody thought it was his flight to Gitmo. But so what's happening around the same time, 2021, during the lockdowns? Dave is doing, I think it's Dave Daily Day Trader or something like that. Davey Day Trader or something like that. I don't know what it is, but he's got his show where he's giving his stock advice and whatnot. And he's really like the leader of the GameStop, AMC, all those type of people. He's really the ones kind of getting people excited about the stock market, getting probably people who weren't involved in the stock market, especially younger generation as well. And what's one of the big hot stocks during this point? It's AMC, right? So remember, it's on the plane, and AMC equals 17. So this is the first episode as well where we get Elon Musk. This is, can you believe we're 17 days in? This is the first time we mentioned Elon Musk. So we show some clips of Elon Musk, and he is at SpaceX launch with President Trump. If you remember, President Trump and Mike Pounce, they both went to this launch that Elon was a part of, right? And what I always think about when I think about Elon during the Trump years is that during the Trump years, Elon became the world's richest man. It was Bezos before that, and it was Bezos in the beginning of Trump, but it ended up being Musk at the end of the day. So I think about how Vince McMahon's net worth had really increased under the Trump administration as well, whether it was the big deal that he did with Saudi Arabia after Trump left there, or whether it was the deals with NBC for the TV rights, for Peacock, which we talked about in the other episode. So it's interesting. Did Trump help Elon get to this new level of riches, right? Who knows? Some people say that it's not the same Elon, that they swapped him out or something like that. and you had a bad Elon at first, and then now you have a good Elon, or maybe you just had an Elon that was blackmailed, and now the blackmail's been released, and he's free to be himself. So who knows? But we have this guy, Cameron Grimes, who's a wrestler at this point in NXT. Now he's in WWE on the main roster on SmackDown. But you got Cameron Grimes, and he's just a hilarious character, right? His character at this point is he was like a redneck, kid that lived in a trailer. That was basically his character, right? And then he struck it rich because he had invested in Dogecoin, and AMC, GameStop, all this stuff, right? So, again, it's mirroring society, right? You have all of these little things that, Portnoy is talking about and all this other stuff. Cameron Grimes is like following it, I guess. And then he actually really did make some money from what they say on all these things. So he was living his gimmick. And he brought it onto WWE television and really got him over to a certain degree. So Cameron Grimes, he comes up a lot in the next Gridiron Gang too, but his hands are all over this in multiple different ways. So I started the show talking about Jacob Israel. Jacob Israel was one of the writers for WWE between, I think, maybe end of 99 to 2001. Had a lot of success there. WWE television had a lot of success there while he was there. And as he speaks about, he was responsible for the Right to Censor group, which I've talked about in the past. In the first Gridiron Gang, where, basically the Right to Censor was a knockoff of the Parent Teacher Council. So RTC, PTC. Funny how it's an R in there, right? And what's the RTC do? They just go out and they censor all the stuff that people liked, right? So scantily clad women and swearing and all this other stuff. They tried to, bring the product down. It was very edgy at the time. And Jacob helped write some of the stuff that, kind of called that stuff out. And eventually WWE did tame down a couple years after this, once the Attitude Era was over. But it is interesting how it was kind of there at that point, and everybody hated censorship then in 2000, and we still hate it 20 years later, right? So it's a good gimmick, right? So remember, I'm on Conspiracy Horsemen, and Stevie Richards, who was in the Right to Censor, he tells me, he goes, "Hey, you really should reach out to Jacob Israel, because Jacob Israel actually wrote the Right to Censor, and he has a YouTube channel now, and he can give you a lot of good stuff," right? And at this point, I don't think I had heard of Jacob Israel or seen his YouTube channel or anything like that when Stevie Richards tells me this. So I go and I look into it, right? And one of the first videos I saw that he did, it came out on 2/4, and he's talking about Purim, right? And on 2/1, that's when we dropped the 107 defeats the NWO. And what's 107 talking about in that video? He's talking about Purim, the Book of Esther, Heyman, right? And I show you Paul Heyman from WWE. So Jacob dropped his video on 2/4. I had dropped mine on 2/1. We're both talking about Purim. We're both showing that. And I found it, a nice little sync right there between us talking about the same thing. Now, I was telling you as well, speaking of Heyman, he's at this point the wise man to the tribal chief is what they call him, and the tribal chief Roman Reigns. He's gonna defend his championships at WrestleMania 37, which is gonna be a 2-night extravaganza. I was there, first event back as a WWE fan, and what was the dates of these two WrestleManias? It was 4/10/21 and 4/11/21. Add them up. You get your 17 and your 18, right? 4, 10, 14, 21, 3, 17, 4, 11, 15, 2 and 1, 3, 18, 17, 18, right? So you have 17 and 18 on the dates there for WrestleMania 37, which I thought was pretty cool. So, remember the name of the article, the name of the video is titled To the Moon, right? And around the same time, 107 is doing an interview with somebody, and he uses that phrase randomly. He goes, wow, this is really crazy stuff, right? And Juan O'Saven's response was, to the moon, right? So kind of a weird response for the question, but you see it in the video. So check it out. Make a determination for yourself. So now we're going to go to another gear here. Sean Stone. Sean Stone, I believe, is the son of Oliver Stone. What did Oliver Stone do? He did the JFK documentary, right? So Sean Stone is interviewing Juan O'Saven. We mentioned Oliver Stone in the very first episode of 4VKM, where we show JFK and we show Vince and The Rock, coincidentally. And, you know, it was the night after they formed the corporation. And you have, you know, Vince saying about how great of a conspiracy this is. And he goes, Oliver Stone, eat your heart out, right? So found that to be a nice little sync. And now you have Sean Stone, the son of Oliver Stone, talking with Juan O'Saven. And what are they talking about? They're talking about the U.S. corporation, right? Now remember, U.S. corporation founded, my opinion, on 2/21/1871. 109 years later, WWE was founded by Vince McMahon on 2/21/1980. This 40 days of 4VKM will end on 2/21/2024, right? So 2/21, big day to say the least, very important day. And you have Juan talking about how, you know, the corporations are foreign owned, right? So the U.S. corporation itself, and then other organizations like the IRS, right? And you see some clips of the court cases because he says it's been admitted in court. Just look it up. All you have to do is do your own research. So I have some snippets of that I put in the clip. You guys can take a look at that. But don't forget, we're talking about corporation. We were talking about the $1 Million Corporation with Ted DiBiase and IRS, right? And Vince McMahon's corporation that he had in 98, 99. You know, that was his group, of course, with The Rock. And, you know, it's just very interesting. Going back to IRS, remember, Juan O'Saven says it was a foreign-owned organization. So, Juan O'Saven, IRS, foreign-owned organization. Who is IRS? IRS is the father of two WWE superstars, Bo Dallas. Now, let's break down the name Bo Dallas for a second, right? Bo, B-O, 215 equals 17, so 17. And then Dallas, right? What happened in Dallas, right, with JFK? Is JFK connected to the whole 17 stuff? I think he is. I mean, he's even buried underneath the 17th letter, right? So you got that little weird connection right there. And then his other son is the late, great Bray Wyatt, who we just lost, unfortunately, too soon last year. And I really credit Bray Wyatt for giving me the motivation to do 4VKM. I mentioned it on the Conspiracy Horsemen when we were talking about it. One of the things that kind of woke me up, it was 11/29, 2019, and Bray Wyatt is doing one of his famous Firefly Funhouse skits. And as you know, I think I'm decorating my Christmas tree or something at the time, so I'm not watching, but I'm listening. And I hear Bray Wyatt start talking about reptilians and how they tried to overthrow humanity. And it just made my ears perk. I'm like, wait, what is going on over here? So then at that point, I'm like, I need to slow down and watch this clip scene by scene. So I do. And one of the shots behind, you know, Bray's in front of a green screen. One of the shots behind him is the Mason logo. It's a blue background, and you have 4 Mason logos. But you know how there's a G in the middle of the Freemason logo? So it starts with a G, but then the next word is I, and then the next word is N, and then the word after that is A. So it's spelling out Gina in Mason logos, which I thought was very interesting. Gina Haspel at the time was the director of CIA, I believe, right? Now, where it gets super interesting is a year later, on 11/29/2020, 1 year to the day of that SmackDown Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse thing happening, you had the news come out about the raid in, what was it, Italy or Germany? I think it was Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, right? You heard the rumors of the Gina Haspel was involved in some sort of raid where the servers that were manipulating the vote tallies back in the United States, right? So that news came out on a year after that day. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, maybe this story is fake news, right? About that server house and that CIA raid and all that stuff. But, it's hard to say, just discredit it as fake news when a year later on WWE or a year before on WWE television, Bray Wyatt, on the exact same day this news comes out, is spelling out Gina in Freemason logos, right? So, very, very freaking interesting, to say the least, right? So, all right. So we talked about those guys. Let me go back to Bo real quick. Bo, I found this very interesting when I found it. And this clip actually got scrubbed off social media. And I'm going to try to find it on the WWE Network. But they did a show called, I think it was WWE Road Trip or something like that. And it was basically just wrestlers in the car talking in between cities after shows, right? So you have Bo Dallas is talking with Curtis Axel, who's the son of Mr. Perfect. So 2 second-generation wrestlers right there. Actually, Bo's a third generation because his granddaddy was also a wrestler. But and actually, they're both third generation because Axel's grandfather was a wrestler too, Larry the Axe. So you have, they're in the car, and Bo Dallas is all into conspiracies and reptilians. He's gone on Chris Jericho's podcast and talked about how he believes in reptilians and all this stuff, right? The Book of Enoch he talks about a lot. So he's in this clip talking about how he believes that all conspiracies are tied together. The JFK assassination, the Illuminati, the reptilians, Princess Diana, 9/11, right? He names these. And WWE's throwing the graphics of all these things as he's mentioning them as well. Now, what's so interesting, sure, people talk about conspiracies all the time, but the first Q drop was on, was it 10/28? And this clip was released on 11/6. So about a week after the first Q drop, or 8 days, 9, whatever it is, you have 10 days maybe, you have this wrestler, Bo Dallas, 17 Dallas, that is saying how all of these conspiracies are connected to each other and all this stuff, right? And it really makes you think, like, whoa, what did he know? Was he following the drops right away in the first week in there? How did this make WWE television? It was a week after, right? And why can't we get this tweet off X anymore? It's gone. Because it was posted by WWE's official social media account. And you see that clip in the video. So I hit up on the Rotunda boys. R.I.P. Bray, like I say. Really, really sad stuff with that. But then we're going to change gears a little bit. And we were talking about Elon Musk earlier. We know Elon Musk, big proponent of Dogecoin, right? So you have Elon doing the Doge stuff, right? You have Randy Orton at the time, right? He is in a feud with Soulja Boy, I think it is, because Soulja Boy called WWE fake, right? He said the rap game's faker than WWE. That offended Randy Orton, so they got into a little Twitter beef right there. But Soulja Boy was a big proponent of Dogecoin, right? Mark Cuban was also a major proponent of Dogecoin. And Randy Orton gave Mark Cuban an RKO right in the middle of the ring one time because Cuban was showing up at WWE a lot and he wanted to get physical. He got put through a table, Mark Cuban, and he got an RKO as well. So at any time Mark Cuban showed up in WWE, for the most part, he got his ass beat. So what's that tell you about the guy? So you have these guys are all Dogecoin proponents, right? Mark Cuban opened up his Maverick store to be able to accept Dogecoin. You had Soulja Boy pushing it. You had Snoop Dogg pushing it, right? Now, Snoop Dogg, is an famous article about Snoop Dogg and Randy Orton being backstage at WrestleMania doing a little bit of this. before WrestleMania, right? So it's like Orton's got his hands in with all the influencers that were pushing Dogecoin. So I always thought that was very interesting. I talked about in the episode where, the 1122 episode where we're talking about 107, the Republic, and I talked about when I went on InfoWars that day I was at the JFK Space Center, the Kennedy Space Center in Orlando, outside Orlando. And I took a couple pictures while I was there. And the one was of the JFK quote of the speech where he's saying, "We choose to go to the moon," right? So that speech is being used in like this Dogecoin commercial here, which I found interesting. But then it hit me. Wow, was JFK like the originator of the phrase "to the moon," right? He kind of was, right? It's in his speech. It's on the wall. Look at the picture in the photo. To the moon, they say. And I guess JFK was kind of, the most prominent person to say it first, at least, we'll say. So the last thing on Dogecoin that I'll say that I thought was very interesting is that we were talking about the $1 Million Man earlier, and he had a son that wrestled as well, and his name was Ted DiBiase Jr. And DiBiase Jr. had a shirt when he was on his own that looked very similar to the Dogecoin logo. So if you look at it, it's a D with like a target going through it, and it looks very similar to the Dogecoin D logo as well. But what's even more interesting is if you look at that shirt that Mr. DiBiase is wearing, the target that splits it almost makes the D look like a 1-7. So you got another 17 there. So very cool. All right, going back to Mr. Portnoy. So Mr. Portnoy, you probably saw the news a little while ago, back in September, I think. He bought his company back for $1, right? Smartest businessman in the history of business at the end of the day. And what's very interesting about this is he sold it twice for, he made bank on both transactions. First time he sold it was to the Chernin Group, which was on 1/7/2016. So he sells it on January 7th, 1/7/2016. And then he sells it to another company, Penn National Gaming, right? So follow the pen, right? And when did he sell it to them? He sold it to them in his 17th year in business, right? So he started in 2003, and he did this transaction in 2020. So 17, you got another 17 there with Dave. 2 17s, because the first time he sold it was on 7. So very interesting. Again, I don't even know he knows about this, or he's I don't think he's aware of it at all, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm super wrong. I just think like some of us were just guided, to do things naturally, or it's just in our DNA to just say things at certain times and do things at certain times. And then those things tend to pan out to be things that we didn't realize they were anything at the time of doing them, right? And I think that's Dave's case in a lot of instances. I think Dave's like a marker for a lot of things, but I think it's unknowingly. Could be wrong, could be very wrong, but I guess time will tell on that. So the game stops, right? GameStop is blowing up at this time. You have a lot of stuff with those stocks and whatnot. Cameron Grimes, like I said, made a ton of money on it. Going back to Gronk at WrestleMania, I forgot to leave this part out. He was the host of WrestleMania 36 in 2020 with no fans, right? And during rehearsals for this event, you had him. He was supposed to dive off a platform onto a bunch of wrestlers at the show, and then he would win the 24/7 championship, right? And they're doing rehearsal before WrestleMania, and they have a mattress down, or a pad down for him to jump on to make this jump. And he's scared. He must be scared of heights or something like that, right? So he doesn't want to do it. Kevin Owens is giving you a behind-the-scenes video talking about how Gronk didn't want to jump off the platform. But then Vince McMahon comes along, and he's like, let me show you how to do it, right? So you have like 76, 75-year-old Vince McMahon at this point get on top of this platform in his suit, right? Full suit still, and jumps off, leaps off, lands on his back on the mat, right? And he gives Gronk the confidence, because if 75-year-old Vince McMahon can do it, then freaking Gronk can do it at the end of the day, right? Now, interesting thing about that, we just talked about follow the pen, right? The video clip that was sent out that shows this whole scene between Vince and Gronk, the timestamp on that was 1:29. So we have a follow the pen and you have a follow the watch, because that watch was set at 1:29, never forget. So Gronk makes his dive during WrestleMania and he ends up winning the 24/7 championship. So now Gronk is your 24/7 champion. And, you know, is this the start of the Gronk era in WWE? At this point, he had just retired from the New England Patriots. Don't forget, Brady went to Tampa Bay. And, you know, it looks like Gronk's about to start things up in WWE. But then a couple months go by, and he loses the championship because now he just got signed. He's coming out of retirement. He's going to play another year with Tom Brady in Tampa. And who beats him for the 24/7 championship? It's our guy, R-Truth, which, speaking of R-Truth, he came out last night twice. You know, his whole gimmick is that he makes a lot of mistakes and, you know, he misunderstands a bunch of things, right? So he comes out in the women's Royal Rumble match at number 24 by accident. And then he comes out later in the men's Royal Rumble match when he was supposed to at number 24, right? So you got R-Truth in 24. We're in the year 2024, so, you know, maybe we get some R-Truth finally, right? So anyway, he becomes the 24/7 champion. Gronk goes to Tampa, which was the home of WrestleMania 36, the home of WrestleMania 37. I take that back. Was supposed to be the home of WrestleMania 36. And was the home of Super Bowl 55, which would happen right before WrestleMania that year. And 5-5, Super Bowl 55. And you had Tom Brady going for his 7th championship, which he won, right? So 1 of 7 there. And the date of that, you know, I kind of put a tweet out earlier in the day. It was destiny. A lot of people say the NFL is rigged, right? I don't necessarily disagree with that, but they were showing you in your face with the date 2/7/21. Add it up. 2 + 7, 9. 2 and 1 is 3. You got a 12. What's TB12? That's his number. So you have number 12 winning his Super Bowl, number 7 on 2/7/21. So at Super Bowl 55, which is very, very fun. And the home of the upcoming WrestleMania 37 a couple months later. So some more Barstool stuff at this point. There's a guy, Brandon Walker, BFW on X. You know, I kind of liked him at first, but he's kind of stiff. But anyway, he makes his WWE debut. He's doing a pre-show, I think, for NXT, WWE NXT. He's one of the commentators on there. And you get the debut of LA Knight. You know, and LA Knight is a huge star in WWE now, but this was his first appearance. He kind of burst onto the scene, and you know, he's been a mega star ever since here. And he kind of calls the idiot BFW the idiot BFW, but he is a nice guy. But you know, he's an AEW mark. That's kind of my impression of him, right? It seems like he got maybe paid off by Uncle Tony. Maybe not. Maybe he just likes the access that Uncle Tony Khan gives him, and that's why he had a little bit of a slight bias, if you ask me. But anyway, you have LA Knight. We show you Pat McAfee for the first time. Pat McAfee's kind of, you know, he left the NFL, Gridiron Gang, and he retired at a very young age. And he immediately signed to Barstool Sports and started a podcast with Barstool Sports. So I show you a little bit of that there. Then he ends up in WWE himself as well. He leaves Barstool Sports, becomes a big deal on his own. He's in and out of WWE. He was just there last night at the Royal Rumble. But it's pretty fun, to say the least, right? And then, again, Barstool Sports, you got Dave. You have Cameron Grimes again, right? So Cameron Grimes, like I said, is kind of mirroring all of Dave's financial advice. And he's talking about it openly on NXT television, right? Now, very funny thing is he's mentioning this stuff. He mentions the fact that he's not supposed to have all this money because he has a 1.7 GPA. A 1.7 GPA, right? It couldn't be a 1.5 or a 1.6 or a 1.8 or 2.3 or anything like that. It had to be a 1.7 GPA. So it's fun. And what's he saying in this clip where he mentions the 1.7 GPA? He mentions a new ETF that's coming out tomorrow. And, he didn't name the ETF, but the ETF that was coming out the next day was Dave Portnoy's ETF, which was called Buzz, B-U-Z-Z. And while Dave's doing this promo for Buzz, he's like, Buzz, kind of like, getting stung by a bee. And then when he says stung, he has a little cartoon of Sting, the wrestler, coming down from the rafters, right? So it all ties together. Again, knowingly, unknowingly, who knows, but it's just a beautiful web that's been weaved, to say the least. So, all right, so to wrap things up, we end a little strong here, right? We've talked about Bobby Lashley in the past. There's a clip of me on with the Conspiracy Horsemen, the second time I joined them. And I said, I feel like sometimes wrestlers are used as markers for events in time, right? That's like the best way I could use it. Look at like Umaga, right? So that was years before MAGA, and it was kind of just dropped for us way back then. So Bobby Lashley had returned at this point in the late 2010s, early 2020s. He's as hot as he's ever been. And he hadn't had a championship match since the last time he had a championship match was in 2007. What else happened in 2007? That's when the whole Trump, Lashley versus Vince Umaga match happened as well, which Lashley won, helped Trump win, and also beat Vince McMahon, shaved his head. Now I'll show you a clip from an interview that Lashley did, right? Everybody says Trump is racist. Lashley came out. Lashley is an African-American man. He comes out and he's like, no, Trump's not racist. Everybody gives him a bad rap, right? So I throw that in there for you. But Lashley, he's on, like I said, he's on the biggest run of his career right now. Now, this is March 2021. We're dropping this video. Trump was out of office on January 20th. His first public speech after leaving office was at CPAC. CPAC, and I think they had it in Orlando that year, 2021, and that was going to be the first speech that he did, right? Now, CPAC is 23. Remember, WrestleMania 23 was when Trump was with Lashley. The day after CPAC speech was on a Sunday. The day after, Lashley was challenging for the WWE Championship for the first time since 2007. And how many years had Lashley been in the business at this point? He says it in the interview. I put in the clip, right? Lashley had been in the business for 17 years at this point. So he says 17 years in the making. It's boom, like right there, right? So it's very interesting, right? Lashley ends up winning the championship the day after Trump's CPAC speech, 23, right? CPAC 23, Lashley and Trump at WrestleMania 23. And we ended off with, I've already said this before, but who was the Money in the Bank winner at WrestleMania 23? It was Mr. Kennedy. So you have your JFK reference in there as well, too. So, very fun episode. There's one more Gridiron Gang. I have to have notes on a whiteboard now because these videos at this point in 2021 they start getting really long and so much packed into them that it's tough for me to just go freelance right off the top of my dome like I have been doing. But it's a really awesome episode. I think this is going to explain it pretty well for you. And again, as always, best thing you can do is go rewatch it on Rumble. The link's going to be below. Take the space out after HTTPS. But it is Gridiron Gang 3 to the moon. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the 4VKM podcast over on YouTube. We'll be putting it on Rumble as well, but get that subscription on YouTube, 4VKM.com, for all the other episodes. And our buddy Jacob Israel, he's going to be one of our first guests on the 4VKM podcast, so I'm very excited about that. And, the cool part about that is that we don't necessarily agree on everything, but that's a good thing, right? Because you get different points of views. You get to see things in a different way, right? We get to show the audience a different point of view as well. There's a lot we do agree on. We both agree that there's a lot of shenanigans going on. And at the very least, we know that the WWE stuff and the Trump stuff are, overlapping, right? So it's going to be awesome to talk with him. Very looking forward to it. So there you have it, folks. Enjoy the show and have a wonderful Sunday evening.